السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. إيه؟
الجمال.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكن خاسرين. رب اشرح لنا صدورنا ويسر لنا أمورنا واحلل عقدة من عافيتنا يفقهوا لنا. اللهم نور قلوبنا بمعرفتك واشرح صدورنا بنور كتابك وسنة نبيك واحفظنا عن زلل وخطأ في بيان مرادك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So you all understand the last part we did yesterday about the sabab sometimes being majaz.
Moulana, just they explain it one time. Didn't get it complete.
Inshallah. Okay. I'll just explain the one masala. From there you can understand the other one. What they're saying is that sometimes we attribute something to the hukam as a sabab, but in reality it can't be the sabab. So we just say so majazan, figuratively speaking, because it's easy to do so. It's easy for us to understand the way to the hukam by making that particular thing the sabab. And so because it does sort of indirectly lead to the hukum, which is what the sabab does, that is why we sometimes call it a sabab majazan, even though in reality it can't be the sabab. For example, if a person says it takes a yameen, takes an oath. So the yameen we say is the sabab of kafara. We even say kafaratul yameen, kafaratul yameen. And so kafara is a hukam, and we make attributing it, making mudaf to the cause, to the sabab, kafaratul yameen. But it can't be the sabab. Why? Because these two things cancel each other out. Understand? You take a yameen, you take an oath in order to uphold the oath. Okay? And kafara is given when you break the oath. So if you have kafara, you can't have an oath. Your oath no longer stands. So the kafara is canceling out the oath. And on the other hand, if you have an oath, you take an oath and you remain firm on the oath, there is no kafara. You won't have to pay kafara. So upholding the yameen, what they say, birrul yameen, is cancelling out kafara, is negating the kafara. So the sabab can't negate and go against the hukam. Doesn't make sense. The sabab leads to the hukam. But in such examples, we find that if the one is found, the other one can't be found. The other one is cancelled out. The kafara is cancelling out the yameen, the oath which you took. And if you remain firm on your oath, it cancels out any kafara, any payment of kafara. You follow? So there can't be a sabab,
Sure.
because a sabab is something that leads to the hukam, not away from the hukam. So we just call it a sabab majazan, because indirectly it's the reason why you have to pay kafara in the first place. Had you not taken an oath, you wouldn't have to give kafara when you broke the oath. In reality, the actual sabab is the hint, breaking of the oath, not the taking of the oath. Okay? But because it's
Sure.
just easy to do so, to attribute the hukam to the sabab, that is why we sometimes call those things sabab majazan, but in reality it's not. And from there you can understand the other example which he gives there as well about itaq and talaq. We make ta'liq of those two things to a particular shart. Understood?
Sure.
Okay, so now we go فصل الأحكام الشرعية تتعلق بأسبابها. That the ahkam of the Sharia, the laws of the Sharia, are connected to the asbab. Now here, first of all, sabab does not refer to the sabab we just completed now, which is something which leads to the hukam. But here, sabab is in a general dictionary meaning, in the general Arabic meaning of those things that bring about the hukam. In other words, the illat and the sabab. And so asbab here refers to the illat and the sabab. Okay, not the sabab shari, which we just spoke about now. Understood that?
Sure.
So don't get confused now. So the reason for the chapter is he wants to answer a question. Right? The question is, why does the Sharia attach the ahkam to an illat and a sabab? What is the purpose of an illat and a sabab? What is the wisdom? So not the purpose. What is the wisdom of the illat and the sabab? At the end of the day, it is Allah Ta'ala's injunction. It is making something compulsory. So why now is the Sharia attached it to a sabab and an illat? Why do we need to find out and know what the sabab and the illat of the ahkam are? So why can't we just say, this is the law of Allah Ta'ala carried out? Okay? So he wants to answer that question. And then he goes on to also discuss the asbab of various ibadah, salah, saum, zakat, and hajj. Because these asbab, or rather the illats and the sababs, are not so clear as maybe the previous examples that we did regards to other laws. So those two things he discusses in this chapter, and he gives quite a lot of examples and explanations to show us why. So the simple answer is why is because the asbab and the illa is something which is tangible, something which you can see, or you get something which you can observe. See? So they serve as landmarks, as signs, as isharat, as alamat. They serve as signs which indicate towards the hukam of Allah Ta'ala. Because if we just say that Allah Ta'ala is making it wajib, so the question arises, okay, now when does this wajib come about? Allah has told us to make salah. But we can't see that wujub, and we can't see Allah Ta'ala's talk to us, Allah Ta'ala's address to us, telling us, okay, now read salah. That's not possible to see or to hear or to witness. So how do we know when we're supposed to perform salah? So for that reason, the Sharia, although in reality Allah Ta'ala is the mujib hakiki, but because this is intangible to us, we can't hear Allah Ta'ala's address or see it. So therefore, Allah Ta'ala is attached it to physical things or tangible things so that we know when we're supposed to carry out that particular ibadah. You follow?
Sure.
So this is the wisdom behind understanding and knowing the sabab and the illah. وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّ الْوُجُوبَ غَيْبٌ عَنَّا. And that is because a thing being compulsory is invisible to us. We can't see that wujub, that obligation coming into existence. That meaning Allah Ta'ala addressing us or telling us. فَلَا بُدَّ مِنْ عَلَامَةٍ يُعَرِّفُ الْعَبْدَ بِهَا وُجُوبَ الْحُكْمِ. So it is necessary that there must be some kind of sign, some kind of landmark, some kind of signpost that will make the servant know. It will cause us, the servant, to recognize, to understand that at this particular point, at this particular point, it is now compulsory for me to act upon this particular hukam, upon this particular injunction of Allah Ta'ala. وبهذا الاعتبار أضيف الأحكام الأسبابي is for this consideration that the Sharia has attached its laws to asbab, to ilal, and to sababs. You follow?
Okay.
فالسبب وجوب الصلاة الوقت. Now, like I said, you're going to give examples of the ibadah, starting with salah. So the sabab for the obligation of salah is the time. And the waqt is that, so aqim salah. Now, when must I aqim salah? So aqim salah in the location. وإذا غسق in the location, for example. وإذا غسق الليل, and so on and so forth. Understand? So that time, so for example, when zawal time ends, it is now we understand that Allah Ta'ala is addressing me and telling me, perform your dhuhr salah. So that post zawal serves as a sign and as a signpost which informs me now that it's time to perform salah. And same thing with Sabah Sadiq and sunset and so forth. Now, what is the dalil that waqt is the alamat? أن الخطاب بأداء الصلاة لا يتوجه قبل دخول الوقت. On this dalil or this proof that the address from Allah Ta'ala perform the salah is not addressed to me, is not applicable to me before the entry of that time. Before the entry of the whole time, I don't have to read Salah al-Dhuhr. Before Fajr time, I don't have to make the Fajr. It's only when that specific time comes in, now I have to read those Salah Fajr. So this is a dalil and this is a proof at that time, the entry of that time is a alamat, a sign, telling me that now is the time for you to act upon this hukm of Allah Ta'ala. وإنما يتوجه بعد دخول الوقت. It is only applicable to me after the entry of the time. والخطاب مثبت لوجوب الأداء ومعرف للعبد سبب الوجوب قبله. Understand? And the address from Allah Ta'ala, Aqimus Salah. This is sort of an answer to a question. Okay, what's the purpose of Aqimus Salah or Aqimus Salah? So he's saying that the address from Allah Ta'ala confirms the compulsion of you carrying out the action. And it is a means of letting the servant know that now the sababul wujub has already occurred before it. Okay? I don't know if you remember when we did Amr, we did that there are two things here. One is nafsul wujub, and the other one is wujubul ada. That's the two types of nafsul wujub and wujubul ada. Nafsul wujub is the obligation itself, and wujubul ada is the obligation to carry out that order. For example, the principal says, I want you to clean your classrooms at 10 o'clock. So when he said, I want you to clean the classroom, that's the order. But 10 o'clock is the time when you need to carry out the order. So nafsul wujub when he instructed you. But the time to carry it out, wujub al-ada, execution of the order, is at 10 o'clock. So the khitab of Allah, so when the time comes in, at that time, the salah becomes compulsory. And then it is as if Allah Ta'ala is saying, Aqim your salah, go perform your salah now. You understand? So the time is for nafsul wujub, and the order of Allah Ta'ala is for wujub al-ada, the instruction to now go and carry it out. Execute the duty which has become compulsory on you with the entry of the time of the salah. You follow?
Okay.
وهذا كقول is giving an example from the Messiah. This is like someone says, أدي ثمن البيع وأدي نفقة المنكوحة. That pay now the price of the goods, or give now the expenditure to your wife. And right. So he's saying that just like how in business, when you buy something from someone, by you merely purchasing the thing, for example, I'll buy a pen from you for 20 rand. But it says Kabul, I accept. So by the mere proposal and acceptance, that act becomes lazim, becomes obligatory. I have to now pay that money, and he has to give me the goods. Okay? But I don't have to pay it at that moment, to the extent that if he gives me the pen and he walks away, and he comes back after 2 days and says, okay, give me the money now, I need the money. Then now you have to pay the money. But it wasn't that he was made you maaf. It was compulsory upon you already when the deal was done. But the only time now when it becomes necessary for you to hand it over is when the person says, okay, give me the money now. Addi thaman al-mabi. So the payment of the money became wajib, compulsory, nafsul wujub, when you did the deal. And now the payment of the money, executing that instruction to give the money, becomes now possible, payable or compulsory when he tells you to give the money. Same thing with giving the nafaqah to the wife. As soon as you get married to her, you're responsible. It becomes not compulsory upon you, nafsul wujub. It becomes compulsory upon you to pay her and expend monthly expenditure. But now we come into the month and we say, okay, I need my money for the monthly expenses. Now you have to hand it over to execute it, to perform that duty. Understood?
Okay.
So by you merely getting married, that duty becomes compulsory. And now when she asks you to give the money, now it's necessary for you to hand it over and to execute that duty, to carry out that duty. So in the same way with Salah, when the time comes in, it becomes compulsory for you to read Salah. And then the command of Allah is there, telling you right now, read your Salah. Okay? So he's saying, وَلَا مَوْجُودَ لا في جنس وَلَا مَوْجُودَ يُعَرِّفُهُ الْعَبْدِ ها هنا إلا دخول الوقت. And there is no existence, or there's nothing in existence that will make the slave know عرف يعرف to know, and عرف يعرف تعريف becomes متعدي. It will make the slave, the person, know or recognize or come to understand over here that it's time now to carry out the action, except the entry of the waqt, except the entry of the time. فتبين أن الوجوب يثبت بدخول الوقت. So it becomes clear from this explanation that the wujub, the compulsion, the compulsion, the act itself becoming compulsory, is established by the entry of the time, as soon as the time comes in. ولأن الوجوب ثابت على من لا يتناول الخطاب. And also, this compulsion is also established and confirmed upon that person whom the address doesn't even include. Meaning, they will find that because of nafsul wujub, even such persons who might not be in a state at that time of being aware of the command of Allah Ta'ala, then meaning the wujub al-ada, not nafsul wujub. And the wujub al-ada, they're not aware of it. And Allah Ta'ala is telling them now, right? As if Allah Ta'ala is telling them now, they perform now, right? Now the time has come in, read your salah. Even such people, salah is still compulsory upon you because of nafsul wujub and because of the obligation because of the obligation itself. Okay? So the legal obligation, let's call it legal obligation and contractual obligation. Right? Legal obligation, that because you are saying and so forth, you have to carry out certain duties. And all those duties are compulsory upon you. And Jubal Ada, contractual obligation, you have to carry it out now. You have to fulfill that obligation when the time comes. So he's saying, for example, Kannaim, like a sleeping person. Sleeping person, even if he fell asleep by mistake and he missed Fajr Salah. So that doesn't mean that Salah is maaf, even though the khitab akimi Salah, because he must now Allah Ta'ala's command, akimi Salah. Okay? Why? Because as soon as the time came in, he was alive at the time, he's saying, Ba'aligh, whatever, he fulfills the conditions, so it became compulsory upon him. The fact that he missed the order from Allah Ta'ala doesn't waver the command, doesn't waver the wujub. He still has to complete it when he gets up. Well, mughma alayh, and similar thing, the person's unconscious. Nafsul wujub still applies, even though the wujub al-ada, he's unable to do it because he's unconscious for less than 5 salah. Unconscious for 5 salah, for less than 5 salah and above, you don't have to read it, according to the Ahnaf. So even though he missed the wujub al-ada, but because of nafsul wujub, he was alive at the time, the time came in, and the waqt came in, the waqt for the salah set in, mukallaf, whatever. So it's still compulsory upon him, even though he didn't execute his duty. You follow?
Sure.
So all of this is indicating towards what? That waqt is the sabab of salah. Wala wujuba qabla al-waqt, and there cannot be any compulsion before the time. Right? So before Zawal, I don't have to read salah. I don't have to read Zawal salah. So that's another proof that the time itself plays a role in making the duty compulsory. فَكَانَ ثَابِتًا بِدُخُولِ الْوَقْتِ. So therefore the wujub, it only becomes established and found and confirmed by the entry of the time. Okay,
जी
is it clear so far, inshallah? Any questions?
जी अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह understood.
Right. Now the question arises that you saying the time is the sabab, and the hukam that we're talking about now is salah. So the salah is the musabbab, right? Hukam. And normally the musabbab is found after the sabab. The illat of the sabab, normally the musabbab, the hukam, is found after those things. Okay? So if Dhuhr time is from, or Fajr time is from Subh Sadiq to sunrise, then the musabbab, the hukm only supposed to come in after sunrise. Because that's the time when the sabab ends. If the whole time is the sabab, understand? So then how come you're telling the person to read salah in that time? Because normally you don't find a hukam running concurrently with its sabab. Rather, it occurs after the sabab. Because the sabab leads to the hukam, the illat leads to the hukam. Understand? So he's answering that question. So he says, by the means of this explanation, ظهر, it become clear to you أن الجزء الأول سبب للوجوب. Because he's been saying دخول الوقت all the time. Enter the times. So he says it becomes clear that the first moment is the actual sabab of wujub. So as soon as the word ends, that first moment of it, that is the sabab. So if salah is carried out in that moment, you've performed the musabbab, the hukam, after its sabab. You follow? See? Can you hear me?
जी मैं
Okay. But now he's explaining it further. ثم بعد ذلك طريقان. So he says after that there are two ways that we can explain this. How does the time, if you're saying the first moment is the waqt of salah, let's say for example Hanafis, we read Fajr salah a bit later, it's not Ramadan. Okay? So then what is the sabab then in that case? Because the first moment has passed. So he says there's two ways of understanding this. أحدهما, one of the ways is this: نقل السببية من الجزء الأول إلى الثاني. That we transfer the sababiyah from the first moment to the next moment. So in the first minute, that is the sabab of salah, if you read it that time, awal waqt, you read the salah after its sabab. If you don't read it in the first minute, it passes on to the second minute. The second minute now is the sabab. And after that, Quran is there, addi salatuka. If you don't read it in the second minute, to the third, to the fourth, and like that, so on and so on, so on and so forth. You follow? So every minute prior to you performing the salah is the sabab of that salah. So the musabbab is found after the sabab. You follow?
जी
So إذا لم يؤدي في الجزء الأول ثم إلى الثالث. So we will transfer from the first moment to the second moment if it is not carried out in the first moment. Then to the third and the fourth إلى ينتهي إلى آخر الوقت until the time is completed. فيتقرر الوجوب حينئذ. So then at that end of the time the wujub still remains. It's established. ويعتبر حال العد في ذلك الجزء. And once the time expires, we will see that what is the state of the servant in that last moment. And that will determine how the salah needs to be performed, the qada of it needs to be performed. Because he hadn't performed the salah right until the last moment. There are no more moments after that, the last minute is finished. So the wujub remains, the last one remains, or establishes the wujub upon this person. So because that is the last moment, what state was he in or she in at that last moment? And taking that state into consideration, that status into consideration, that is the type of qada they have to make. Become clear from the example. ويعتبر صفة ذلك الجزء. And we'll also take into consideration quality or the state of that last moment. What is the makruh time? What is the waqt al-kamil, and so on and so forth. وبيان اعتبار حال الأب. So first to explain the first part. What do you mean taking into consideration the status or the state of the servant? So he says, in the explanation of as taking into consideration the state of the 7 is this, and أنه لو كان صبيا في أول الوقت, if he was a نابالغ child in the beginning of the time, say the beginning of the time, he was still نابالغ, he went to sleep بالغا في ذلك الجزء and became بالغ, or realizes بالغ at the end of the time of the understood? So because we won't say that when the time of Dhuhr entered, he was not baligh, so this salah of Dhuhr is not applicable to him, no. Because at the last moment of Dhuhr, when the wujub al-ada was still there, the nafs al-wujub was still there, he was baligh. So we take that last moment into consideration. He was baligh at that time, so that Dhuhr will have to be made qada of. It will be his first salah, a qada salah, as a baligh person. You follow?
Yeah.
أو كان كافرا, or he was a non-Muslim في أول الوقت. He was a non-Muslim in the first moment. مسلما في ذلك الجزء, and became a Muslim in the last moment. أو كانت حائضا, or the lady was in a state of haid, أو نفساء, or in a state of what do you call this, postpartum discharge, right? The discharge happens after birth. في أول الوقت, in the beginning of time, طائرة في ذلك الجزء, but she became طائرة in the last moment. So because at that last moment, when the nafs al-wujub comes about, the sabab, she was clean. So therefore, that moment will be taken into consideration. She has to make qada of that salah. You follow?
Sure.
So wajibat is salah. In all these instances, salah becomes compulsory. Why? Because in that last moment, when the nafs al-wujub was still there, they were in a state that they could perform the salah, or the salah, that the address of the salah was applicable to them, applied to them. وعلى هذا جميع صور حدوث الأهلية في آخر الوقت, and based upon these examples, all those instances of where a person becomes liable or has capacity to carry out the action in the last moment. Right? So a musafir came home, he hadn't ready salah yet, he said, you can make qasr salah, but he came home in the last moment, he became mukim in the last moment. So how much rakat must he read when he was making qada? See?
Moulana?
When a musafir, if he was to come home in the last moments of Dhuhr, for example, how much rakat must he read?
You have to read the full
amount. Because in that moment, he's not a musafir any longer, he's mukim. Okay? And vice versa. If the person was a mukim and he traveled in the last moment, and I said, then he makes qasr. وعلى العكس بأن يحدث حيض أو نفاس أو جنون مستوعب أو إغماء ممتد في ذلك الجزء سقطت عنه الصلاة. And the opposite, that if a woman was to get a hayd or nifas or something that the projectors becomes junun mustawa'il, meaning completely mad, totally insane, no chance of recovery, or إغماء ممتد, where he falls unconscious for an extended period of time, في ذلك الجزء, in that last moment, سقط عنه الصلاة, salah will fall away. Because in that moment, she was no longer she no longer had the capacity to perform salah. The address of the Sharia was no longer state to read the salah. Okay? Clear?
Sure.
Any questions? Anything you didn't understand?
No, I understood that.
And then he explains about the musafir that is story now. ولو كان مسافر في أول ذاك مقيما في آخر يصلي أربعا. The person was a musafir in the first time and became muqim, resident in the last time, will read full 4 rakat. ولو كان, if it's a 4 rakat salah. ولو كان مقيما في أول الوقت, if he was a muqim resident in the first time, مسافرا في آخره, and became a musafir in the last moment, and ready salayat, يصلي ركعتين, and then he only has to read 2 rakats, qasr salah will apply to him. Because in that moment, that salah became compulsory upon him in that state. of being a musafir or mukim, as the situation may be. You follow?
Sí.
Okay, then he explains about the juz itself. What do you mean that you take into consideration the quality of the last moment? That inshallah we will try and do tomorrow. Bismillah ta'ala. Any questions, anything you don't understand?
لا حبيبي.
Okay. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته